Tonight, costed campaign platforms from two federal parties. The Liberals and NDP release key commitments to help win over Canadians.
The core of this platform is investing here at home.
It's focused on the people who build this country, and it starts with healthcare.
How will the parties pay for the promises they're making? Also, the social issue the Conservatives are putting in the spotlight. A record turnout on day one of advanced polls, but are young Canadians showing up?
Our education system does not inform young people enough the importance of engaging democratically.
Putin's surprise move as Russia declares a temporary truce with Ukraine. And the Northern Super League slides into Toronto, what it means to Canada's sports landscape.
And it's in! The Montreal Roses!
Plus, dealing with elevated chocolate prices this Easter.
If anything's going to get cut from the list, it might be chocolate.
The soaring cost of cocoa hitting a sweet treat as consumers look for deals to fill their baskets.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. A critical moment in a federal election campaign when parties unveil their fully costed platforms, giving Canadians a chance to understand their plans and the spending strategy. Even more important during a trade war. The Liberals and NDP both released their budget breakdowns today as Elections Canada reported a record turnout on the first day of advanced polls. We begin with CTV's Jeremy Sharon and the Liberal Party's plan.
Flanked by a crowd of supporters and candidates, Liberal leader Mark Carney unveiled his party's plan for Canada today.
To unite, to secure, to protect and build Canada.
Those four themes define the party's platform, one that is clearly centered around challenges the country faces in a changing global landscape and Donald Trump's trade war.
They're offering voters a lot of goodies based on borrowed money.
The price tag, $130 billion in new spending over 4 years and an increased deficit up to $62.3 billion this fiscal year. That's 1.96% of Canada's GDP, dropping year by year to $47.8 billion or 1.35% of GDP by the end of 2028.
Can we afford all of this, given we're already in a fiscal position that's vulnerable and it's going to get even more vulnerable? I don't think we can.
The pitch, Ottawa spending more on capital investments, which Carney says would create big returns for Canadians and drive investment from the private sector.
Our plan over the next 5 years will create $500 billion in economic value.
The platform also plans to cut operational spending.
We will balance our operating budget over the next 3 years by cutting waste, by eliminating duplication, and by deploying technology.
Defense spending is one of the big ticket items with a price tag of $18 billion, which Liberals say puts them on track to exceed the NATO target by 2030. But Mark Carney has already indicated they may need to spend more.
Looking at the needs, both to secure Canada first, but also our international obligations, it is possible, David, that we will need to do more.
Also outlined in the platform, promises already made during the campaign, including a costly middle-class tax cut, changes to boost internal trade and reduce barriers, making Canada more energy independent, a pledge to build more homes faster, and a plan to invest billions in the healthcare system.
Now, the Liberals estimate they'll generate $20 billion in revenue through Canada's tariff response and expect to save $28 billion through increased government productivity, which some experts call ambitious. Heather?
Jeremy Sharon in Ottawa. Thank you. The NDP is promising nearly $100 billion more than the Liberals in new spending if elected. It's why Jagmeet Singh also unveiled a suite of new taxes to pay for it all. CTV's Colton Prale breaks down the numbers.
In his home riding, Jagmeet Singh unveiled a platform to spend, not cut, in order to protect Canadians from a trade war.
Liberals and Conservatives put the profits of the powerful ahead of the people.
Singh pitching over $227 billion in new spending, driving up the deficit by over $48 billion in the next 4 years. Healthcare is the biggest driver, totaling $46 billion, including a new promise to expand mental health coverage. The other big-ticket item, better employment insurance, coming in at $41 billion by 2029. The NDP plan to cover over half that cost through the revenue from counter tariffs on the United States.
We won't let Trump's trade war become your burden to carry.
Along with big spending promises, there are also bold revenue generation plans. A newly unveiled wealth tax on those worth over $10 million, a corporate surtax for the biggest companies, and an additional new tax on businesses. All in all, the NDP say these changes will bring in $184 billion for Ottawa.
We are the only party talking about a wealth tax. We're the only party saying those at the very, very, very top, the super rich, the ultra rich, should contribute a little bit more.
But some economists are skeptical of a plan that relies so heavily on taxing the wealthiest businesses and people.
Especially when you have Trump saying, if you come onto this side of the border, we'll leave you alone. Are you driving them to that side of the border by squeezing them for taxes to pay for all of the expensive program spending that you're offering?
The NDP also unveiled a host of new promises in their platform today, including a plan to lower the federal voting age to 16 and change the electoral system by the next federal election. Heather.
All right, Colton, thank you. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre didn't reveal his full platform today in the Vancouver area, but he did announce a new drug policy aimed at mandatory treatment, an approach that is resonating with some diverse communities in British Columbia. That's where we find CTV's Judy Trin.
So we will act with compassion.
With families impacted by drug addiction standing behind him, Pierre Poilievre said the Conservative government would give judges the ability to force people into treatment.
Possession of illegal drugs will remain a crime, but we would allow judges to order treatment as an alternative to prison.
Poilievre said his government would also stop safe supply programs that replace toxic drugs with prescribed opioids and would require federal prisons to provide rehabilitation programs to help offenders recover.
We will pay for 50,000 treatment spots. And we will do it by defunding the supply of powerful opioids, cutting back on bureaucracy, activists, and those who continue to perpetuate the problem.
In Surrey, where an estimated 500,000 people gathered to celebrate the Vaisakhi Spring Festival, Poilievre's tough on crime and drug policies are resonating.
I am in Canada since 2011. I have never seen any changes. It is increasing day by day. No government is making no hard policies to control this drug and the shooting.
But others here disagree with the Conservative policy to eliminate supervised injection sites. There's also worry that mandatory treatment programs won't work.
Safe injection sites, and how are you going to get people rehab? You're allowing people to do drugs in safe injection sites, which I agree with. It stops HIV and all these different infectious diseases from spreading, but you can't force someone to do rehab. How? It has to be genuine.
What's unclear at this point is just how much these drug programs will cost. The Conservatives right now is the only major party that has yet to present a full costing of its platform. Pierre Poilievre says that will happen in the next few days. Judy Trin, CTV News, Surrey, British Columbia.
It seems Canadians are eager to get out and cast a ballot this election. Close to 2 million people showed up for day one of advance voting on Friday, setting a new record. That's according to Elections Canada. Voters were met with long lines at polling stations across the country. Advance voting continues until Monday. Among those advance voters were likely some younger Canadians. The youth vote could be an essential factor in this election, but that demographic hasn't been showing up to the polls in large numbers recently. CTV's Kamal Karamali on the issues that may get them out in force this time.
So you have your ID, everything's ready to go? It's Thomas Lavery's first time voting in an election.
My parents said I should vote. They influenced my decision.
For this teen, it's been tough to keep up with the issues.
It is definitely tough to keep up. Been pretty busy with studying.
Voting rights groups say it's been a struggle getting young Canadians engaged this federal election, and that most of them are only motivated to cast a ballot if their friends and family are also voting.
I think for my age group, it depends on maybe the social networks that you're engaging with.
With many of them also finding the entire process confusing.
I think the biggest aspect here is accessibility, understanding where to show up, understanding how to do it.
In past federal elections, youth voter turnout has been very low, even dropping below 40% in some years. In the past 2 decades, the turnout for those between 18 and 24 years of age has been well below that of the general population. In the last federal election, more than 60% of all age groups showed up to the polls, while for the youth demographic, it was only 46%. The proposed solution teaching this civic duty at an early age.
That starts in the classrooms, and it has to start in the classrooms. It shouldn't be nonprofits' responsibilities to get young people to show up and vote. That's ridiculous.
As for this election, there's still hope that younger voters will turn up in bigger numbers.
There does seem to be a heightened interest in some of the issues.
With those top issues for youth being affordable education and more career opportunities, according to a survey by Young Politicians of Canada.
It went well?
But it seems once teens get a hang of the process,
Yeah, you just walk in, show your ID, go mark the ballot.
There's a good chance you may see a voter for life. Kamel Karamali, CTV News, Toronto.
A heartbreaking incident in Alberta where part of a historic village and museum east of Edmonton has been destroyed by a grass fire. Flames erupted last night at the Ukrainian Cultural Heritage Village, prompting evacuations and closing a section of the Trans-Canada Highway. Firefighters managed to save dozens of historic structures at the site, but many artifacts at the visitor center were lost.
We are absolutely devastated. This is a very important historical site for us.
No injuries were reported, and the village is currently closed for the season. The site commemorates the history of Ukrainians who settled in Alberta and is made up of more than 40 historic buildings that were relocated to the village and restored. Ontario's premier spending part of this Easter weekend helping at a Toronto food bank, an event that turned political when the issue of tariffs came up and how it's impacting manufacturers. That had Doug Ford taking a swipe at Donald Trump.
You know that guy down south of the border, which I don't like. Exactly, Boo is right. So because of his tariffs, and I don't know if you saw Unico or any other company, they're getting a tariff 25% down in the U.S. because they get their tins manufactured, 25% more. So the packaging is 50% more. I've directed my Minister of Economic Development, do you believe we don't make cans anywhere in Canada? Yeah, well, this is going to change.
Ford said his government is going to bring aluminum can production back to Ontario. Ford also telling people at the event that a strong provincial economy is the key ingredient in reducing the high demand for food banks right now. Coming up, building bridges across the pond.
I think that Manitoba has all the ingredients, as I said yesterday, to deepen even more the friendship and the partnership.
How Manitoba is forging alliances with the European Union. Plus, Vladimir Putin calls for an Easter ceasefire with Ukraine, why it may already be in jeopardy. Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced a 30-hour Easter truce in Ukraine, despite Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accusing Moscow of already violating it.
Guided by humanitarian considerations, the Russian side is declaring an Easter ceasefire from 6 p.m. today to midnight from Sunday to Monday.
Putin also said Russian troops will still be prepared to respond to possible violations. Ukrainian troops were told to hold fire, but Zelensky says Russian attacks continue on the front lines. At least 4 Russian airstrikes hit Ukrainian cities in the last few hours after the ceasefire came into effect.
That bombing profoundly shook the country. and did more to all of you. But in the end, it brought out the best in America.
Former U.S. President Bill Clinton marking the 30th anniversary of the Oklahoma bombing in Oklahoma City today. In his keynote address, he promoted kindness among divided Americans. The 78-year-old was president when a truck bomb exploded by a federal building on April 19, 1995, killing 168 people. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, a Catholic convert, met with senior Vatican officials in Rome, where they discussed current international conflicts and immigration. It comes amid tensions with the Catholic Church, as Vance has clashed with Pope Francis over the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. Vance is spending Easter weekend in Italy with his family. Easter celebrations were also held in Jerusalem, where hundreds of Orthodox Christians flocked to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre to celebrate the Holy Fire ceremony that symbolizes Jesus' resurrection. Turning to Canada's economy now and trade tensions with the U.S. Earlier this week, Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew met with European Union members to discuss trade. CTV's Alex Karpa explains how these talks could have a major impact on the province's financial future.
Located about 1,000 kilometers north of Winnipeg is the subarctic port town of Churchill, and a key part of Manitoba's strategy to do more business with the European Union.
Many of the member countries around the table said they want to import energy products in the summer to prepare for their winter. And we have a shipping season in Churchill that's open during the summer months.
The federal and provincial governments have put money into finishing work on Churchill's rail line and continued redevelopment of the port, which began shipping critical minerals last year.
I'm very pleased to meet you.
Representatives from 18 European Union countries met with Manitoba's government earlier this week to discuss the potential of increased trade through trade corridors like Churchill.
I think that Manitoba has all the ingredients, as I said yesterday, to deepen even more the friendship and the partnership.
With an uncertain future in trade with the United States, the meeting between Manitoba and the EU was a chance to start a new relationship.
There's possibilities there, and I think looking into those possibilities seems to make a lot of sense. Now's the time to start doing it.
The EU and Canada have had a free trade agreement in place since September 2017. Experts say closer ties with the EU would be good for Manitoba's economy, but the impact won't be felt overnight.
There has been a gradual increase economically on an ongoing basis. I think what we want to make sure is that that's going to continue. And I think that can be fast-tracked because I think there's going to be more and more companies that are looking at markets that are a little bit more reliable than we're seeing from the United States at the current time.
Manitoba's premier did raise the option of creating a second port in addition to the port of Churchill on Hudson Bay, with Kinew saying there is a major need to look at exports outside of the U.S. Alex Karpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
Still ahead, she kicks, she scores. How fans are rejoicing over the very first professional women's soccer league right here in Canada. The NHL playoffs are now underway, and just one Canadian team was on the ice tonight.
Here's a chance, and Lowry scores!
The Winnipeg Jets going head-to-head against the St. Louis Blues in Game 1 of the Western Conference Final. The Jets coming out on top, 5-3. More Canadian teams in action tomorrow, and a big game shaping up with the Toronto Maple Leafs taking on the Ottawa Senators in the Battle of Ontario. Well, soccer fans in Canada have something new to cheer about: the Northern Super League. The Professional Women's Soccer League kicked off this week in Vancouver, and excitement skyrocketed today as Toronto and Montreal hit the pitch. TSN's Matthew Shinetti brings us some of the excitement from the match.
The opening week of the Northern Super League ended with the Montreal Roses beating AFC Toronto 1-0.
Giveaway right away, and the shot, and it's in! The Montreal Roses!
And Tanya Boychuk's goal inside 90 seconds has now been added to a catalog of firsts that's going to grow next week when the league's inaugural season moves to Halifax and Ottawa. And the Halifax Tides and Ottawa Rapid FC make their presence felt, just as Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal, and Toronto did this past week. But let's unpack the word presence just a little bit more. First, in terms of attendance. Over 14,000 welcomed the Northern Super League in Vancouver and Toronto this week. And then there's presence in terms of competition. And Canadian Women's National Team head coach Casey Stoney was at BMO Field to offer her support to a league that's going to grow Canada's talent base. But then there's also presence in terms of existence and what it does to the Canadian sports landscape. And I watched the emotions from field level pregame of so many fans who have waited for Canadian Professional Women's Soccer League for so long. And those emotions also went ahead and made their presence felt too to AFC Toronto midfielder Emma Reagan, who used to sit in these stands and watch the Canadian Women's National Team. Irrespective of the result on Saturday, she looked up in these stands and she saw a poster with her likeness drawn on it. That's why presence matters. That's why visibility matters. Matthew Shinetti, TSN, Toronto.
Still ahead, the hunt for cheap chocolate. The delicious treat now served with a side of Easter sticker shock. It seems your sweet tooth could be taking a bigger bite out of your wallet. Global cocoa prices have exploded over the last 2 years, forcing chocolate shops to eat the extra cost or pass it along to the customer. CTV's Alison Bamford on why your Easter egg hunt got a little more expensive.
The hunt is on at the Saskatoon Farmers Market.
There you go.
An appetizer for Madison Calickie's daughters, who will search for more Easter eggs at home tomorrow.
I usually put quite a bit of chocolate in the basket and then in their eggs as well.
This year, Calickie was on a hunt of her own to find the cheapest chocolate.
Places like Walmart, I found the prices quite expensive. Going to Costco, buying in bulk was a little bit cheaper, but yeah, overall the prices for sure have went up.
A global cocoa shortage brought on by climate disasters is to blame for the persistent price hike. Saskatoon's Claude Hardin has been in the chocolate business for over 4 decades. It's had its ups and downs, but nothing quite like what he's faced in recent years.
The increases we've seen the last couple of years have been extraordinary, over 50% increase in our raw chocolate in the last 2 years.
Recent data shows the price of Easter chocolate products has increased 10 to 25% in the last 2 years. Sticker shock that could mean fewer treats in the Easter basket this year.
We just didn't buy quite as much.
The reality is treats are one of the things that are last on the list that you need. So if anything's going to get cut from the list, it might be chocolate.
Back in this Saskatoon store, they say the price jump hasn't stopped shoppers from buying their sweets, and they hope that won't change.
There's many families that have built it into their tradition, so an Easter egg hunt is certainly in the mix for a lot of us.
A tradition, big or small, that many hope will have a sweeter cost in the near future. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Saskatoon.
That is our newscast for this Saturday night. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.